a question. Has anyone here noticed lately that it seems that our world is feeling a little upside down? Anybody notice this other than me? I don't know about any of you, but I find that these unity principles are so much easier to practice when my boat is rowing merrily down the stream, right? Yeah, it's easy to practice when you're feeling great. Yet you and I both know that we practice these principles not for that immediate feel-good feeling, right? We practice them to remember who we are. And therefore we can become more open and receptive to the seeds of divine ideas that are continually raining down on us, in us, and moving through us. Sometimes, though, when things feel a little off, it clouds my perspective. I'm not always able to feel or see with my spiritual eyes. Sorry. Again, that's part of being an expression of both fully human and fully divine. The good news? We can choose to see things differently once we go within. Once we tap into our spiritual powers of wisdom, understanding, imagination, and more. This got her better. Life is like a garden, filled with unlimited potential and possibilities. Anyone here a gardener? As a good friend of mine says, gardener. I love that. I'm out in the garden. Well, over the past few months, I prepared a garden. And I've planted 1 million different types of vegetables. And it's the first time I've done this. And I have to admit, I was a little overzealous in my endeavor. It kind of got away from me. But thank goodness I was able to hire someone to help me. It's also, thank goodness, that I can laugh at myself because I really went nuts with it. But with anything I do, because I'm kind of a nerd, I research it. So I research specific gardening techniques, the tools, and so on. And in my research, I discovered that nothing will grow unless I have perfect soil, fertile soil. So I immediately use that as a metaphor for my life and my thoughts. Nothing grows unless my divine mind and heart are in harmony with the one. Well, of course, as many of you know, I'm in ministerial school, and so this gardening project made me think of the parable of the sower. It's good to know that all that Bible study isn't going to waste, right? This parable, I found out, was written in 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and I was told by an authority that when something is written in 3 Gospels, it's a pretty good, that it's a strong indication that Jesus really said these things. Now, it's a short version in Matthew, and so I'm just going to read it to you. It's really quick. It's Matthew 13, verses 1 through 9. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it really didn't have much soil. It sprang up quickly, but because the soil was shallow. When the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still, other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. He ended with saying, whoever has ears, let them hear. I've heard that saying said a number of different ways in my life. Pay attention. I have a friend who reads things to me. He says, this is squiggly lines. Pay attention. In this parable, the disciples went on to ask Jesus, why do you speak in parables? These disciples, you got to love them. They didn't always get what he was saying. So he went on to tell them that he speaks in parables because so many people want to know and understand, and they can relate to the stories, just like all of us, right? Well, I personally like metaphysically interpreting writings from the Bible because here at Unity, we don't take the Bible literally. We metaphysically interpret it. And so I get to interpret what I'm reading the way I understand it, and I'm not being told what to think. So if you went and metaphysically interpreted this parable, you could interpret it any way you want. We're not here to tell you what to think. I'm asking you to go deeper. So I'm going to share my metaphysical interpretation of parts of this parable. And I get those metaphysical interpretations from Charles Fillmore, one of our co-founders, who wrote a number of books, The Revealing Word and the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. As I said before, you may have a completely different understanding, and it's all goodness. I have a saying that said, all rivers flow to the ocean of God's bliss. So back to the story. As I read that this farmer threw seeds around, and depending on the soil they landed in, they either grew, they didn't grow, they grew and died, or grew and were choked out, or they grew phenomenally. Now, metaphysically, seeds are divine ideas, and soil represents our stages of consciousness. It felt pretty simple to me, that interpretation. Divine ideas are born in various stages of consciousness, right? Sometimes we get it all at once, sometimes it takes forever. But when I read about these different stages of consciousness, it made me stop. Because I don't know about you, there are times when I'm not always expressing my most loving, sweet, adorable self. And I again remember, Deborah, you're both fully human and fully divine. And I get to choose how I want to show up in my world. Though sometimes that choice is made unconsciously, and I don't even know that I made the choice until someone responds to me and I don't like their response. Has that ever happened to you? Yeah. But overall, this parable is a metaphor for humanity. Each of us receives divine ideas, seeds, and it's from our level of conscious awareness, soil, that determines which seeds will grow and which will wither and die. This parable encourages us to embrace a conscious awareness practice. And as we do, we feed new habit energy to grow and expand our human experience, so that we get to live the life we desire. But like any new habit, it takes time. So easy does it on you. Many people I've talked to about this parable really like to focus on the seeds, the divine ideas. And I was intrigued by the metaphysical interpretation of the soils. As I mentioned earlier, soil represents our conscious awareness. So I'm going to go into that just a little bit. That rocky soil where that seed fell on the rocks, that represents those who hear the word of truth and are happy to hear it. Who doesn't like a good word of truth story, right? However, when the pressures of life come along and we're not able to stick to our beliefs because the seed divine idea has not taken root sufficiently to grow, has that ever happened to you? Well, you're happy to hear it, then it's gone. It usually goes when that person's beeping behind you at the stoplight. You think you've practiced. You're breathing, you're counting to 10. But when you get irritated about something or someone, and then that's not it. It's that one more thing that happens, and everything you practice falls by the wayside. And after doing this a little bit, you might get upset and say, hey, I prayed, I meditated, I've read the books, I've listened to the talks, I've attended the classes and workshops, my crystals have been charged. Why isn't this working? I'm here to tell you it is working. Breathe and remember it's called a spiritual practice, not a spiritual perfection. Everything you experience is part of the journey, and it all begins within. So then there are those other divine ideas or seeds which fell on shallow soil, and they did well till the sun came up. The light was shining, those ahas, and then they withered because they had no root. Those aha moments are precious gifts. They are moments of sudden realization, inspiration in spirit, or insight. I've sometimes heard those moments referred to as God winks. And even though they may not always show up at the best times, and sometimes it's too much too soon, just remember it's your journey. You can walk it at your own pace. In the parable, some of the seed fell among the thorns, and the plant grew but was choked. Jesus said this soil represented those who would hear the truth but use it in a material way rather than spiritually. Raise your hand. Have you ever met anyone like this? People who talk a good talk, they know all the spiritual words, but they're not speaking from a place of integrity or authenticity. That's their journey. We don't have to join them. In recovery, we say, thanks for the invite to the dance. I'll sit this one out. I used to say that a lot to my mind. Then there's those divine ideas, those seeds that fell on good soil and produced many times over what was sown. This soil, this is squiggly lines, pay attention. This soil represents those who hear the truth, accept it with a generous and abundant spirit, and begin to practice what they're learning. Therefore, they're shining their light in the world for others to see. This type of soil requires devotion to a daily prayer practice. When we experience, I love these words, fertile soil consciousness, we become constructive thinkers, which is more than just being a positive thinker. Constructive thinkers release their attachment to the mind and align with spirit for guidance. And as they do this, old erroneous beliefs, thinking, emotions, things such as doubt, fear, greed, those are cleared. And feelings such as, and emotions such as love and kindness and compassion come forth. They're visible, they're expressed. You can feel this with people who are authentic and live with integrity. You still with me? By now, you're probably so excited that you're wondering, how can I apply this parable to my life? You can. But if you're not excited enough, I'm going to read something to you from Charles Fillmore. It was a quote that he wrote at age 94 when he was writing the 12 Powers book. He said, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. Can I get an amen? Amen. All right. So this week, I encourage you to become more aware of the thoughts, the words, and the ideas that are planted in your fertile soil of consciousness. Consider your daily prayer practice as a spiritual tool to cultivate your fertile soil consciousness. You can add a mantra, a verse, a poem, or a Bible passage as you begin your prayers. We give you an affirmation you can use. My favorite way to start anything that I am doing is to say, let there be light. Let there be light. And as you are more aware throughout the day, just start to notice some of the changes in your life. I bless each of you as you continue to plant your seeds with fertile soil consciousness. As you dance with your divine powers of love, wisdom, imagination, and understanding. And know that you are held in the highest light of love. Namaste.